People take lots of risks for the sake of love. But God is the greatest risk taker of all. Hi friends. I was performing the wedding of a couple young friends a number of years ago. They were planning a beautiful outdoor wedding that was just going to be so nice. But my main question to them as we were talking through the plans was whether or not they had a contingency plan, because after all, the wedding was going to be in an area where the weather was traditionally known to be bad. So what's the backup plan? We always have a backup plan when we're working on something really important. When the Father was organizing salvation, he handled things completely differently because he did not have a backup plan. Jesus has always been God's only plan for salvation, as we've already said. With no backup plan in place, Jesus' birth shows us the kind of risks the Father is willing to take for the sake of saving us. And this is important for us to realize because it shows us the extent of the Father's love. In a previous devotional, we read from Hebrews 2 that Jesus had to be made like us in every respect. To do this, as Paul tells us in Philippians 2, Jesus was born into very humble circumstances. No one could ever say that Jesus had an advantage even from his birth. Think with me through the situation. What if Mary had said no? What if Joseph had gone through with the divorce? And more than that, they did not live in a time when the healthcare was all that good. There was what you and I would call an unacceptably high infant mortality rate when Joseph and Mary were expectant parents. Whatever the percentage was, that meant that the Father was willing to take that much risk to save us. Imagine realizing that the future of the universe hangs on whether one baby lives or not. Think about some other dangers that might have endangered Mary's pregnancy. This is an 80-mile trip for a young couple. But it's not the 80-mile trip you and I would take. She's pregnant, possibly quite pregnant. They're 80 miles. She's on the back of a donkey on mostly unpaved roads. And there are no nice hotels along the way in which they can stay. What if she'd gotten sick during this time? Now, unless they were traveling in a group, there was also a risk of bandits along this 80-mile journey. And whatever the circumstances were when Jesus was actually born, we can assume that it was less than ideal, even for that time. Then, in addition to all these things, Herod, when Jesus was young, Herod could have been successful in his attempt to kill the boy. And the family had to move down to Bethlehem when Mary was pregnant. They had to escape from Bethlehem to go to Egypt. They then went from Egypt on their way back to Bethlehem, but then had to divert and go back up north to Galilee. As a youngster, Jesus had more frequent donkey miles than most anybody around. Our Christmas card view of Jesus' birth is so polite, so serene. The reality was not at all polite. and not serene. And few of us would have found this an acceptable place for one of our children to be born. Jesus willingly subjected himself to life in the flesh. He became hungry. He cried. I know the Christmas carol says that no crying he makes, but if you're going to be made just like us, then I'm sorry, but that's not true. He even bled when he was hurt. If God was playing it safe to save us, then he would not have permitted his only son to be exposed to these risks. But, as we said, he had to be made just like us. And that meant risks and all. God is the ultimate risk taker. God gave his only son because there was no other way to rescue and save us. Jesus has, as we've said, been God's rescue plan from before the creation of the world. Now, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the first Advent devotional about Jesus being God's only plan, I encourage you to go and listen to that one, where we focused on some of Paul's comments, particularly from the book of Ephesians. God was willing to take all the risks necessary to save us. He has that much love for us. The only way to save us is to become like us. And his birth is another example. And the risks associated with his birth underline the depths to which God would go to save us. A little baby, totally dependent upon his young mother and adopted father, in a world where all the powers of evil were attempting to find him and stop him. This was the only hope of all things being restored to God. Pray with me, please. Lord, may we see our own worth in the birth of Jesus, where you took risks, where you humbly came, where you became like us to rescue us and to save us forever. Thank you. Amen. This is Scott Shade. Thank you for joining me today. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to the videos or share the devotional videos and what I hope is a growing devotional community with your friends. So until next time, blessings.